Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin, the blueprint for avoiding a death cross. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. The sale on the premium list is going to be ending in just under a week. If you guys have been waiting to jump on that, make sure you guys lock in the lower rate. You'll get access to weekly reports and videos, the Telegram alerts channel, the risk dashboard, and more. So check that out. You can find a link to that in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So where we are is eyeing a potential death cross. And I've seen people say things like, okay, well, they're not going to cross. Like, they'll do something like this and they won't actually cross. I've seen people say that. I've seen people say they will definitely cross. Okay. And so it had me thinking, well, what if we just sort of dubiously speculated? You guys know we like to dubiously speculate here. If I had a band, it would probably be called Dubious Speculation. But the reason we look at these death crosses is not because of necessarily what they imply, because of what they've implied in the past. Now, in this death cross back in October of 2019, it represented a few more months of going down. Okay, a few more months. This was October. And then we turned around about 6, 7, 8 months later, and it really started to push back up. Other death crosses have been a little bit harder because they ended up coming with very long moves to the downside. Now, again, you guys know my theory is that this is a lengthened cycle, and that we will ultimately trend back up, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen immediately. Now, what I would say is, how do we avoid a death cross? Okay, so here is another death cross, and then there is another death cross right here. How do we avoid it? Well, what we could do, again, is dubious speculation. The white line here is the 50-day SMA. Okay, the blue line is the 200-day SMA, and then the yellow line is the price. And you notice from here, it just becomes a straight line. Well, why is that? Well, I wanted to speculate on if the price of Bitcoin moved up an average of X amount per day, would we in fact still have a death cross, or would we avoid it? So by taking this approach, we can investigate at what rate on average would the price of Bitcoin have to increase for us to avoid a death cross. This first chart basically just shows us an average of $100 a day. So if the price of Bitcoin were to increase on average $100 a day, then we would still have a death cross in June. We would still have a death cross in June. You can see near the end of June, we would in fact still get a death cross, even if we increase by about $100 per day. Now, that doesn't mean we have to increase $100 every day. We could go up $500 one day and then not do anything for the other 4 days, and that's still an average of $100 a day. But that's why the line becomes straight, is because it's just looking at $100 a day on average. Obviously, we know that won't happen. What about $200 a day? What if we increase by $200 a day? Well, if you increase by 200, you get this. The price is moving up relatively quickly. By early to mid-July, we're probably flirting with 50K. You still get a death cross. You still get one. What about 300 a day? You would still get a death cross, even if we increased on average by $300 a day. Okay, and this is, again, that doesn't mean we have to go up $300 every day. We could go up $1,000 one day and then not do anything for another 2 days. But this is talking about, again, on average. So you can see that even going up $300 a day on average, we're still going to get a death cross. $400 a day, we still get a death cross. $500 a day, we still get a death cross. $600 a day, we still get a death cross. So if the price of Bitcoin were to increase by $600 per day on average for the duration of June, we would in fact still get a death cross. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to immediately go down. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's a lagging indicator to some degree. It's a cross of two moving averages, which we know are lagging indicators. So, take it for what you will. My thinking, again, is that we're in a lengthened cycle. It's going to take longer for us to get to 100K. If we get there in 2021, great. Or if we get to the cycle peak in 2021, great. But I think it's actually going to take longer than that. So, $600 a day, you still get a death cross. And again, I've seen people say, well, hey, we're not actually going to get a death cross. They're going they're going to come close to each other and touch, but not quite cross. And I mean, this is a different thing. I mean, there's the implications. What does it mean to have a death cross, right? There's that implication. Well, what does it mean to have a death cross? But there's also, well, are we going to get one? And then, are we going to get one is a different question. Well, what is the implication of it? In this video, we're not discussing necessarily the implication of getting a death cross. We're just talking about, are we going to get one? And I've seen people say they're not going to cross. They'll come close, and I'm just showing you guys, well, what needs to happen for them not to cross. So if the price of Bitcoin were to go up $600 a day, we would still, in fact, get a death cross. If it were to go up on average $700 a day, we would still get a death cross. So if the price of Bitcoin went to 50K in a couple weeks or so, we would in fact still get a death cross. Now, it would depend on how it gets to 50K. I mean, if it goes to 80K next week and then comes back down to 50, okay, we're not going to get a death cross. But if it's sort of just a slow, methodical move up to 50K, we in fact still would get a death cross at the end of June. You can see that the timing of the death cross is delayed depending on how quickly we move up. So this is $100 a day, 200. You can see the cross is getting later and later into June if in fact we are able to put in a nice relief rally. The way we avoid a death cross, if on average Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin were to increase by approximately $800 per day, starting today, then we would avoid a death cross. Okay, so what that would look like, by July, we need to be at 60K. By the beginning of July, we need to be back at 60K, more or less, where the average move from here to that point would be about $800 per day. So by July, we would need to be at 60K. And if we are, then we can, in fact, avoid a death cross. So again, the point of the video is not to discuss the implication of the death cross. Okay, it's not that. It's just to discuss how do we avoid a death cross. And if you're not sure what a death cross is, it's nothing more than the cross of the 50-day SMA and the 200-day SMA. This is not something I made up. This is just, you can find it everywhere. It's just the cross of the 50-day and the 200-day. And the last time we had a golden cross was here, and we kicked off a nice move to the upside. This was a golden cross. During an accumulation phase, you'll get several of these things. If you go look at basically the amount of golden crosses and death crosses for each cycle, this one we had 0 golden crosses because, well, we didn't have enough data to have a 200-day moving average. This cycle, we had 1 golden cross before the bull market kicked off. This cycle, we had 2. You see during this accumulation phase down here, we had 1 golden cross and then rejection, and then 2 golden crosses. So we had 2 golden crosses here. So it was 0, 1, 2, and then here we had 3. In fact, we had a golden cross and then failure to, failure. A golden cross and failure. Or sorry, a golden cross and then failure. And then the failures. The golden cross is here, failure is right there. Golden cross, and then we were off to the races right here. We're off to the races. So this one was 3. So the first one was 0, this one was 1, this one was 2, and this one was 3. So we could be we could be just in another accumulation phase. I mean, if you just want to look at this like, hey, we need to consolidate for a while, if you want to call it that and say, hey, we just need to spend some time consolidating in here before we can really decisively move up, that's fine. But I'm just talking about these are the golden crosses and the death crosses. We are getting a death cross. What does that mean? Well, one interesting thing I find with these golden crosses and death crosses is a lot of times in the immediate short term, they'll do the opposite of what you expect. Okay, let me show you what I mean. So here was a golden cross, and then the price dropped. Okay, here was a death cross, and the price went up. A golden cross, on the day of the golden cross, the price went down. On the day of the death cross, the price went up. So a lot of times you'll see this thing where on the day of the golden cross, sometimes you'll get some moves to the downside, but a lot of times the overall trend can stay the same. On a death cross, you can get a move to the upside, but the overall trend still stayed the same. This doesn't always play out like that, but it does play out enough where it is at least somewhat interesting. For instance, here we had a death cross right about there, and the price just went sideways. If we go back further, here we had a golden cross, and we continued this little move, and then we came back down. So essentially, golden crosses and death crosses, they basically tell you what you already know. They basically tell you what you already know, because the 50-day SMA is just an average of the price over the last 50 days. The 200 days average of the price over the last 200 days. Therefore, if you're getting a death cross, that means your more recent movements are starting to really lag behind what you were previously doing, and therefore people are somewhat bearish. So the interpretation of what comes after a death cross is obviously just that, up for interpretation. Again, the purpose of this video is just to show what is the blueprint for avoiding a death cross. And in order to avoid it, the price of Bitcoin needs to, on average, move up approximately $800 per day. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Remember to check out the sale on the premium list. It's going to be ending in just under a week. Make sure you guys lock in the lower rate. We have weekly reports and videos, the Telegram alerts channel, the risk dashboard, the Into the Cryptoverse app, the strategy dashboard. We have a whole lot of stuff. Make sure you guys check it out. Lock in the lower rate. Thank you guys for tuning in. Definitely subscribe. Let's go for 500,000 subscribers. Click the bell icon to turn on your notifications, and I will see you next time. Bye.